Hey guys, welcome to Ringsiders. Today I'm joined by Kevin Gill. How you doing, man?
What up, though? I'm great, Jamie. Thanks for having me on, man.
My pleasure, man. Before we talk, I love that wall behind you. Absolutely love it.
Oh, thank you. I've always dreamed of having a wall of fame, so to speak, and it's not fully done. You can see some of them there.
It's incredible.
But there's some real retro stuff, like you see our friends here, the Beastie Boys, of course, the God of Justice. I don't know if you're familiar with Judge Judy.
I'm familiar with Judge Judy, yes. Yes.
She's a worldwide phenom.
We do get her over in the UK.
Yeah,
wow.
she's...
Like
I guess we got my man Mick Foley here,
Yes.
the God of all media, Howard Stern.
Wow.
Where I usually do a lot of my Zooming and like I do a show called Get High and Watch Wrestling with Ron Funches, and I do it from my desk, and the background is way less interesting. But I have a variety of backgrounds I could use when I'm more free form and don't need a keyboard.
I love this one, dude. I noticed Sarge, though, because I've got a bit of a story with Sarge. I went to All In a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I met Sarge at StarCast, and he insisted on taking a photo with him putting me in the Cobra Clutch. So I got a normal picture of him, then I was walking off, and he was like, where are you going, maggot? I'm like, oh, we've got to take another picture, but I'm putting you in the Cobra Clutch. You've got to sell it. So I didn't sell. There's a picture of me, and I've got the biggest smile on my face while I've got me in the Cobra Clutch. I couldn't sell it. I'm like, man, it's if you'd have told 8-year-old Jamie that Sergeant Slaughter was going to Cobra Clutch him one day, man, that's what dreams are made of.
Yeah, what a great. I love guys like Sergeant Slaughter and Hacksaw Jim Duggan and other dudes like that are almost like Bret Hart, obviously, but so many guys that are like the elder statesmen of wrestling that treat wrestling with respect, treat the fans with respect. They're like ambassadors of this business. You know what I mean? They don't descend into madness or sadness or anything. They're ambassadors of wrestling, and that's what I love about guys like them. And there's a lot more. You know what I mean?
Well, me too. I got to meet Hacksaw, actually. He did a UK tour a few years ago. He did a joint one with Ted DiBiase.
Nice.
And, they were both so much fun. Hacksaw tried to steal my wife. Obviously, jokingly, trying to steal her.
Of course.
Although she's now my ex-wife, so, I mean, you never know.
He planted the seed. But in the end, you might come out the winner. You know what I mean?
Well, this is true, man. But I totally get what you're saying, man. I mean, speaking of wrestling, also, before we talk about your journey, I mean, are you an old-school fan? Because I'm a big old-school fan. I mean, I get that vibe with you as well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I just love wrestling, you know what I mean? But there's such a magic. Like last night, I was just watching old Terry Funk interviews and Stan Hansen interviews. And I even watched randomly, like, YouTube is a black hole in a good way. But my YouTube recommendations, like, started bringing up, like, oh, here's a AWA TV show from Christmas 1985. And I might watch a match or two, but I really love the in-ring promos after the matches and the things like that. Like the real, obviously wrestling is the art, but that being able to talk people into the seats and to be able to project those characters. So I love modern wrestling, but there's a magic to old school wrestling and some of the character. I watched Sabu versus Terry Funk in the barbed wire match. Now that's old school in a sense. It's not old school like Bruiser Brody, but it's all part of I always say it's part of the diverse tapestry that makes wrestling.
Absolutely, man. I mean, I was watching something the other day. I think it was from Madison Square Garden in 1973. I found something. It was Gorilla Monsoon versus Captain Lou Albano.
Wow.
I mean, I love it. I mean, if my friends were here, they'd be saying, "Oh, put the Attitude Era on." I'm like, "What? No, man. Watch some history." It was just, it was incredible. I had goosebumps watching it. I mean, that's as old school as you can get, man. But I mean, how did your journey start? I know you was in the music business as well first. Is that right?
Yeah, like I was just a big fan. As a kid, I was a big fan of music, wrestling, and video games, like many kids or whatever. These things just kind of possessed me or took over all my time. So as I got into these things, I didn't just get into them like to the extent a normal person would. I went into it like, beyond reason, like insatiable. I could never get enough of any of them. And then over time, I got involved in like an underground music scene in New York City called the New York Hardcore Scene. And I got to meet all these bands, and I was going to all these underground shows, and I would be like, oh, why doesn't this band have a record out? How come this band doesn't have anything or whatever? It was like a scale model of a big thing. Like you'd go to a small venue, everyone knew all the words, everyone's going crazy. The band doesn't even have a record out. So it kind of led me down the road of like, well, it's DIY, you know, minor thread and all that stuff kind of teaches you the foundation. And it's like, well, that's the whole point of this, is doing it yourself. So it got me involved in putting out records of underground bands, which was very rewarding, and I learned a lot from it. And so I did that for a number of years. And then of course, because I love wrestling, then you started seeing, like, I did a concept record called The Three-Way Dance, which was a band from New York, a band from California, and a band from Japan. And they would each do a couple of originals, and then they would each cover the other two bands that are on the record. But there's all pre-match and post-match promos and everything, and ring announcements, and in between all the songs. So it's like a battle, you know, a battle for supremacy. And I was doing that stuff and crossing over. And around this time, then ECW became a huge thing again. For me, it was in '96, even though obviously ECW started making buzz a little before that. And then I was just so into it. And video games were popping too. And a new company was going to be starting that didn't have a name yet. And they hired me away from my record label, my little DIY record label. And then that company went on to be Rockstar Games. So I got to do, and still do, I guess, all of my favorite things in one form or the other, you know?
Yeah, they all kind of intertwine, don't they, when you think about it?
100%. It's all, to me, it's all just that magic. It's the creative arts. It's putting out products, but they're more than products, you know what I mean? Because they connect with people, and it's an art, you know what I mean? It's an art form, and it's the product that's put out from it, whether it's Grand Theft Auto or like a Vision of Disorder record or a 5-star match. It all starts with nothing. It all starts with an idea in your head. There's no anything. It's just an idea. And then at the end, there's all these people that are amazed or moved or entertained by it, and it all came from a thought or a creative thought or a forward movement, you know?
Yeah, man. So, I mean, your journey in wrestling, I did a bit of research. Am I right in thinking you actually started out as a referee? Is that true? Yeah, what was that like?
That was wild. I mean, I always was interested in the referee, like the art of the referee, because, you know, you watch wrestling a lot and you study it. And the referee was always interesting, besides like having names like Dick Worley and stuff like that. That you would wonder, you know, the more you learned about wrestling, the more you would wonder, you know, what does the ref do, or what is the ref's role, or what does the ref add to a match, or how can the ref take away from a match? And I used to always watch the refs closely to just try to figure out, you know, what their job was once I kind of understood everything better. But I was like a devout viewer of shoot interviews when those were a regularly produced thing.
You and me both.
And I would literally watch I've watched like every one, you know what I mean? Especially from the 90s and early 2000s. Like I've literally just watched every one. I would read the Observer every week. I would read the Torch every week, Figure 4 Daily. I would just absorb everything that I possibly could. And sorry, now I just got a text from someone and I forgot what I was saying because it came up on my phone.
Oh, man, you said about watching the referees.
Oh, yeah. So I was always interested in it, and I thought it was really cool. And one day I got an opportunity. I was offered, because I knew so much about wrestling, and I started working on a wrestling video game called Backyard Wrestling. I had an idea to make a game, and we did it at IDOS. And during the process of making that, a little bit before we made it, I got to meet the ICP guys. And then during the game, I put those guys in the game, and I got to work with them a lot. From working with them a lot, we had a lot of like very long, overnight conversations and things of that nature, all about wrestling. And they had told me that they're like, brother, we know a lot of people that know a lot about wrestling, but we've never met anyone that's like as wrestling as you are. And like from us, that's a compliment, you know? And I'm like, oh, well, thank you. And they're like, look, we're doing this event coming up in a few weeks. We want you to be the referee. And I was like, oh my God. So like, of course I want to do it, but being like a respectful or an honorable person, it starts eating at me like, man, these guys offered me the thing. And of course I said yes, but what if there's been a misunderstanding? Like, what if they think I went to wrestling school? What if they think I'm a fully trained referee somehow and I'm not? So I hit them back and I just said, hey, just to be clear, like, one, I'm down to do it. I'm committed to do it. I'll do it. I've been studying tape now, like with a purpose to try to like analyze the different styles and blah, blah, blah. But just so you know, I'm not fully trained, and I understand if that disqualifies me or whatever. And they're just like, brother, you got it, you're good. And then I went out to Chicago, and the first time I reffed, it was very unusual because it was like a Mexican culture festival in Chicago, and obviously it was all people of Mexican, Spanish descent, etc., all Mexican music. And then there's me, like a giant, the whitest, most giant guy ever. And Vampiro is the headliner on the wrestling. I'm the only ref. It's just a couple of matches because it's a festival. But I still don't, to this day, don't know if it was a rib or just a production issue. But they're like, all right, we're ready. Like, ref, go to the ring. I'm like, okay. So I just go to the ring, and I'm standing there, and there's a whole crowd waiting. And the crowd, well, I had the forethought before going to the event. I was like, I need something that signifies I support these people. You know what I mean? And I got this little Mexican flag pin. And in hindsight, it's so small. It's like a little tiny lapel pin. But as I'm there in the ring and everyone's just screaming at me and cursing my name and saying all these curses that I don't know, I'm like pointing to this tiny flag on my shirt and just being like, number one. But that's how it started. And I actually got cut accidentally in that match. In my first day of reffing, I got cut accidentally, and it required an emergency room visit.
Wow.
And a medical bill. So people say, oh, if you didn't pay your dues or whatever, like I literally paid my dues. And I have no regrets, you know what I mean? And I got to ref for a lot of great stars around the country, and a lot of great independent wrestlers too. But just to have been in the ring with Roddy Piper, with Paul and Nash, with Tito Santana, I could literally go on for an hour if I thought about it. And it's such a great gift and an honor, and it's amazing that that's how wrestling can work somehow, that the people you literally idolize, like Roddy Piper, could be like, here, have half of my sandwich. And it's like, no, Roddy, please, you eat your whole sandwich. I don't want half your, I mean, I'd love half your sandwich, but no, Roddy. I see. It's funny like that. It was a big lesson for me too, getting to work with people like that, because once I started a ref for ICP, they would run like music type festivals a few times a year, but there's a lot of time that I wouldn't be reffing. So I started to seek out work on the California independents so I could ref all the time and, stay better, stay sharp. And, what was I going to say? So I would be blown away because I would be on the California independents and there would be some dude that's just like a giant nobody. And they would act like they were fucking Roddy Piper. You know what I mean? And then, it turned me off. And then you work with actually Roddy Piper and he's like, hey, here, have my sandwich. And it's like, no. Here, come on. Here, have this here. And you're like, no. Like, I love you, but I have respect for you. And you just realize, like, wow, Roddy Piper is trying to give me his sandwich. And this local jabroni is acting like he's Roddy Piper. And that was like a big light bulb moment for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I actually met Piper a year before he passed, and he was the sweetest guy I've ever met in my life. Obviously, you do the meet and greets and you go through, take your picture, sign an autograph. With Roddy, his agent came out and said, oh, can you all stay in the line? Because we've set a table and chair up. He wants to sit down individually for 1 or 2 minutes with each one of you. And I was just blown away by that. He was such a sweet, sweet man.
Yeah, just an absolute legend. There'll never be another one like Roddy Piper. And I think it's important for new fans, younger fans, all that to understand, and wrestlers as well, to understand where all this greatness comes from and try to harness just a little granule of that, because for whatever it is in wrestling today, the televised product in many cases, it's lacking that spark, that danger, that feeling that a Roddy Piper, a Lou Albano, a Brian Pillman, and so many thousands of people could bring to the dance,
Yeah, no, I totally agree, man. Totally agree. I mean, he was the first wrestler I ever got to meet, and he was just a sweetheart. You couldn't wish to have met a nicer guy. Really couldn't. But you mentioned obviously the ICP. I mean, what was it like working with those guys? Because they're another set of guys who you look at them and you think they really do love wrestling.
That is for sure. You know what I mean? Like at the time, I was a fan, and I would buy. ICP used to put out wrestling DVDs, and at the time here in the United States, like they would print the billboard was the tracking, the body that tracked sales. for records and other things. And the Billboard charts would like be in the newspaper on Fridays or something, whatever it was. Like every week you'd see these charts. And, you know, of course, there's like top 10, you know, movies and whatever. But the third category was always sports. And number one would be like ICP's Wrestling League, JCW. Number three would be ICP. Number two would be WWF at that time. Number four would be like the World Series on tape. And not just me, but an entire world and industry is looking at that like, who the fuck is JCW? Like, how are these guys outselling WWE products at times? How are they? And part of it is distribution. They were distributed by RED or Relativity, which is owned by Sony. But the point is, they had the shelf space. Wrestling was white hot. There was very few products available. They fit the niche. And from there, that's where I think they really got the world's attention. And that's what led to them going to WCW and ECW and WWE and everywhere they went. But working with those guys was great because, their vision and passion for wrestling was strong. And at that time, their commitment to their people was strong. So they would give me the ball to run with it, and I would run with it, and then they would be like, fuck yeah. You know what I mean? So that was a good time. Like, I got to learn a lot. I got to work with a lot of people. I got to travel a lot. And you learn like what to do and what not to do because you watch a lot of people come and go. And some people, you know, everyone has different philosophies or whatever. You know, people can make mistakes and you can give them another chance. But there's I'm old school in the sense that certain things you can forgive, but you don't forget because it's counterproductive to business. You know what I mean? It's counterproductive to a lot of things. Yeah,
absolutely, man. And another guy you did mention, someone we got to speak to a few months ago, actually. What was it like working with Vampiro?
Oh, man. Working with Vampiro was really great. Like, he was someone that, same thing. I got to work with him the first time. It was for the Backyard Wrestling 2 video game, or Backyard Wrestling 1 video game, actually. Both of them. But at that time, I didn't know Vampiro personally at all. And I had ran into a friend of his here in San Francisco during the making of the game. And that led to me. It was because it's funny. I was not in touch with Vampiro directly during the making of the first game or parts of it. Yeah. And then my friend put me in touch with Vamp. And it was wild because I would be calling. He would tell me what time to call. And I would call his hotel like on the road in Mexico. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be back in my room by like 1 a.m. or whatever. So we would just talk about all this stuff. And Vampiro is one of those guys that I feel like a lot of people in wrestling, be it fans or, you know, like bitter people in wrestling, they like to make fun of Vampiro or clown on him and whatever. And to me, I personally don't really get that myself because I see someone that, you know, came from a hard life, that lived all their dreams and is very committed and dedicated to giving back to others. And that's something I've experienced as well. You know, for every crazy Vampiro story that's out there, I got to work with him a lot of times, like bring him in for things. Like he was in the TV commercial for Backyard Wrestling 2. Yeah. Case in point, he was in the TV commercial for Backyard Wrestling 2. And for those that don't know, the commercial features Vampiro powerbombing New Jack through a fence.
Wow.
Through a picnic table, like it's it's a set, like a barbecue. Yeah. And when we filmed that spot, Vampiro had a broken fucking leg. And with a broken leg, and New Jack is not a small man. It's not like, in hindsight, I would have had him powerbomb a cruiserweight. You know what I mean? But he did it more than once that day to film that commercial with a broken leg. And it's like, you know what I mean? And there's been times when Vampiro got his job at Lucha Underground as a commentator. I was working with him a lot at that time because I called a lot of his matches in JCW. And I was listening to him on the Stone Cold podcast, and Stone Cold's like, oh, you have a very interesting commentary style. Like, where did you get it? Or how did you develop that? Or he's like, to be honest, everything I do, I stole from Kevin Gill. Like, it's his style, and I just do it. And Steve Austin's like, Kevin Gill. And then they just go on to the next subject. But to me, like, he didn't have to say that. You know what I mean? He could have just as easily incorporated some or a bunch of my stuff and then just said it was hit. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Things like that to me speak volumes, and they have longevity. They have legs because same thing. It was weird. Vampiro used to be on a TV show with ICP called ICP Theater, and he did season 1 with them. And then at the end of season 1, you know, whatever happened, he didn't want to do it anymore. So without even saying anything to me, Vampiro just began a campaign, a public campaign, that I should replace him on the show. So he started tweeting about it and stuff. And then I think Bill Apter at the time did an article about it. And it's funny because I know when I work with the ICP guys already, and it's funny to me that like this other guy we know is politicking the world for people we both know to give me an opportunity. But then like a few days later, I got a call and they're like, oh, we don't know why we didn't think of you in the first place, but would you want to be on our TV show? And I'm like, yeah. But it was Vampiro who put it out into the world and got it attention. And again, he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He could have just as well, I don't know, done whatever. So things like that, I appreciate and respect. And I like what Vampiro's doing now in terms of he spends a lot of his time trying to give back to people in terms of like mental health and nutrition and all these things on Facebook and now on Patreon. So he's a very colorful and interesting guy. There's never a dull moment. He's highly caffeinated and highly focused on being Vampiro. And that might mean on Monday, he's planning a return to wrestling. And on Thursday, wrestling is not ever going to happen again. Do you know what I mean? And then Monday, he's considering it. But that's life, and that's Vampiro.
Yeah, man, it was a cool dude when we spoke to him. He showed us some like alien artifacts and stuff. And all that.
Yes.
Yeah, man, he was so cool. Really, we were going to do an occult podcast actually. And he was going to do it with us, but obviously he got his own talk show on that time and things, so it didn't pan out. But yeah, man, he was so cool. He took the time, and we could have spoke for hours. But yeah, such a cool guy. But talking of you're commentating. How did you go from that? How did you go into commentating then?
So I've always been, well, I feel like, to toot my own horn, I've always been a talker, so to speak, in life. And a lot of my work after the music industry stuff was like marketing is marketing, but I would also be involved that I would go sell the games to retailers. I would go give a speech at the GameStop manager show to hype people on a game. Like talking's always been part of it. So working as a ref was great and further than I ever thought I would be. But I also would often think like, man, I wish I could be talking on this shit somehow because, So it really started for me. It was wild. I was working with ICP and traveling around the country, being a ref, no complaints. And I was working the California Indies. And I was on a local show here in San Francisco. And I'll never forget it. I was all in my ref gear sitting in the back. And the camera guy is all set up to film interviews, and he's like, oh, I need someone to check the mic or whatever, and all the wrestlers are just like, oh, blah, blah, blah. They're just ignoring him. So I'm a helpful dude and I'm doing nothing, so I just take the microphone and I'm like, I just go off my head like, San Francisco, California, you want to talk about a battle, you want to talk about a war, tonight is the night, I've been disrespected for the last time. I did like a 3-minute promo that had some substance or whatever. And everyone was bullshitting at the beginning, but at the end, everyone had stopped, and then people clapped. And a guy named Dylan Drake, who was the champion of the territory, like the big dog, he's in the room, and he just looks at me and says to the whole room, how the fuck is this guy not on a microphone? Why is he the ref? And I was like, in my mind, well, I'm like, thank you, because I want someone to put me on the microphone. And ironically, the promotion in question did not put me on the microphone. So they did let me cut a promo as the ref, but that was it. So I felt like I really should try to do something on the mic. And there was a situation where a wrestler from California named DJ Riz had passed away, and he was a great friend to many in the California community. So when he passed away, I wanted to do something to help preserve his memory. I'd wanted to do a memorial show, but a lot of his friends had already had the ball rolling on one. Yeah. So I thought, well, what if instead I'll take the money I would have put into running a show. What if I hire a film crew and bring them in, and we'll shoot some behind the scenes, and we'll shoot the show, and we'll put it out. And then in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, and I'll do commentary. You know what I mean? Because this is perfect. And then I was like, oh, well, who am I going to do? I need a commentary partner. Who could it be? So I don't remember I know the guy, so I just asked. Maybe I told him what I was doing, and he inquired. But whatever it was, one thing led to another. And my commentary partner is Lars Fredrickson from Rancid.
Yes, and I was going to ask you about that, yeah.
And we shot, we did it at green screen, so like we do the open and the close and of the show, and then all the commentary parts. But that was just so great. We had the best time doing it. And when that DVD was done, I brought it with me on my next trip to Detroit, and we were in ICP's recording studio, and Violent J puts it on and presses play. And like I said, we do the opening montage, so I don't know, it's like 8 or 9 minutes of us bullshitting. And as it's playing, I'm sitting there kind of cringing, like, oh God, like, why am I on the screen so much? Like, this segment is so long. There should have been 2 minutes. Like, I feel embarrassed because, I'm on the screen too much, and I'm trying to show this to my friend, and he's not saying a word. He's just watching it. So he watches the whole open. We watch the first match, and then he's like, okay, hey, cut it off for a minute. And I'm like, cool. Well, at least we got to check it out. And then he starts telling me the story. He's like, yo, we've been trying to find a commentator for a long time. And I've been meaning to tell you, like, we found him. And they've been working with a lot of people. So I'm like, oh, who is it? Is it Scott D'Amore? Is it Raven? Is it this guy? Is it that guy? And I always remember I got this. No, brother, it's you. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. He's like, I want to be the commissioner. I don't want to be Violent J doesn't want to be the commentator anymore. So I want you to replace me. It'll be you and Shaggy Two Dope as the commentators, and I'll be the commissioner. And we're going to start filming weekly pay-per-views in like 2 weeks, in Wednesday night pay-per-views or whatever. And that was it. I was like, okay.
Wow, that's amazing.
Which is unreal, because Stranglemania, the ICP Stranglemania tape was hugely influential to me.
I've always wondered as well, obviously, with commentating, and you always hear people say that obviously the wrestlers play off the crowd, feed off the crowd. How important is it for you as a commentator, though, to feed off the crowd?
I love to feed off the crowd. I get to do it in different ways. Like, there's some shows I work on, like the Underground Wrestling Alliance in San Jose, California, and they're on IWTV and YouTube. There I get to do commentary over the PA where the crowd in the building can hear it, and obviously the people at home can hear it. So in that case, I get a different type of energy because people react to what I'm saying, and if they react to something, I can then go more in that direction. If they don't react to something, it's a great way, it's a great barometer to measure response and energy. But even on regular shows, like a Game Changer Wrestling show, hearing that audience response of hatred or happiness or anywhere in between gives me a huge boost. And sometimes just hearing I might hear someone from 4 rows over scream out that someone's a piece of shit. And I'm like, he may be a piece of shit, but he is your world champion. Like, it just kind of, it's all like an improv stew, you know what I mean? And all this energy and all these people feed into it, and anything can come out of it. So, like, I recently I didn't work all 24 hours of it, but I worked a lot of it, a GCW Fight Forever marathon that we did. And I haven't counted it up. I've seen people say I called over 18 hours of wrestling. I approximate. But the same thing, at no time I felt like, did I ever lose energy or lose enthusiasm? Because even in a 18-degree Fahrenheit room, or Fahrenheit, even in, right? Now that I'm speaking internationally, I'm like, wait a minute, do we use Celsius?
Well, we spoke to Billy Starks last week, and she said it was absolutely freezing in there.
Yeah, it was 18 degrees in American temperatures. I mean, which is well below freezing. But even in a room like that, I never felt, and even with a very limited, really no audience, just some crew and other wrestlers and stuff, you still just feel that energy. And again, I'm spotlighting a lot on the fans here, though, but also the ring, the competitors in that ring. I try to focus in and absorb everything that they're putting out.
Yeah.
And then the audience is kind of like the sauce, you know what I mean? And then together it's just like a flaming fastball.
Yeah, I mean, I loved Fight Forever. I mean, it was. I tried to watch as much as I can. Obviously, UK time, I might have dozed off a few hours, but it was a show that made me realize how much I love pro wrestling. You know, it really did. It was so wonderful. I mean, what was it like for you being a part of it?
Yeah, it was just incredible. Like, I learned going back to the Backyard Wrestling video game when that project was about to kick off. I kind of had this long talk with myself where I was like, man, I'm about to be surrounded by wrestling 24 hours a day for like 2 years or whatever to make this game. I wonder if it's going to burn me out on liking wrestling or whatever. And it didn't. So once we did the first game and the second game, and my wrestling love was not diminished one iota, I felt like, okay, like I'm probably pretty good. And same, You know what I mean? Like there was times where I wish I like around 6 a.m. The 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. hour maybe are my greatest moments of work just because I was so fucking hungry and, you know, as documented. But overall, I thought it was a great experience. And like my energy, I was very happy with. I was blown away by the performances. And one of the things I keep saying after the fact is that when those shows are just cut up as individual 2-hour shows for Black Label Pro and Glory Pro and GCW and Alley Cat and Effie and AJ Gray, you're not going to know when you're watching the show 6 months from now, oh, this show is taped at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because the energy in the ring, the energy in the room, and I hope the energy on commentary helps create a picture of like, yo, this is the jam. We're not dragging ass to, oh, yeah. You know, a great example is the Tony Deppen match. Tony Deppen and Jordan Oliver went an hour in an Iron Man match. Then they put an hour on top of it. And even that was obviously the longest match I've ever seen, the longest match I've ever called. But it felt like it was around 25 minutes long. Like the whole thing was just like, it did not feel like I sat there for 2 hours. You know, and this is coming from a short attention span person.
Yeah, I know, dude. I love, like I said, it made me, I sat there watching it and I just thought to myself, man, I fucking love pro wrestling. And, you know, it really did just, it made me realize why I'm a fan. It was a wonderful show. Before we start to wrap up, man, because I've kept you longer than I said I was going to do.
Well, I talk too much anyway, so it's easy to do.
Before I let you go, I'd love you to come back at some point if that's cool, because there's so much more to talk about. But before I let you go, one last question about Fight Forever, because he's a guy we love and we've had him on the show. But how cool is Effie?
Oh my God, dude. Well, I'm sure you've heard me rant and rave in a positive way about Effie. And for those that haven't seen it, there's even a video on YouTube that's like my Effie award-winning commentary. It's just a cut of me putting over Effie. But Effie is everything that's right in professional wrestling. Effie is the reason that we have Twitch. Effie is the reason that there's a coronavirus cure. Yeah. Effie is like the sparkle in your water. He's the yellow in your mustard. He's the sodium in your soy sauce. He's the MSG in your Chinese food. Whatever it is you need, you want to be, if you're trying to escape from something, if you're trying to create a new situation, you want to change your life, or you want to lock in your life exactly as you need it to be, one word, Effie.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. Now, I didn't get to speak to him, but Callum, who I do this with, will come be here tonight. He interviewed Effie. And when Effie came on, his backdrop was a sex dungeon. I mean, it was the greatest thing ever.
Yeah, but Effie is truly Effie is someone whose name will be spoken for decades to come in this business. He's not even at his pinnacle yet, or he has not reached his peak. And like he did the High Spots virtual gimmick table the other day, which I'm a big fan of. I don't know how, you know, for the listeners out there, the watchers who don't know, it's a weekly virtual gimmick table. It's like live merchandise sales that Facebook High Spots does on Facebook, but they're very entertaining, great guests, great production. And Effie was on there. And, you know, for example, Effie's on, but next week it's Kurt Angle. Do you know what I mean? So just to give you a idea of kind of the star power and the caliber. So I was thinking, wow, this is like a very interesting thing, because Effie is an independent wrestling star, but he's not Kurt Angle. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then you have an audience that's super into memorabilia from big stars. What would the High Spots audience, who I love, what would they think of Effie? So I'm there watching, as I watch every one of these not stupid, but High Spots auctions. And just stupid that I spent so much time watching them. But Effie comes on there, and I'm reading the comments. And, you know, there's obviously a bunch of people there that are there for Effie and they're Effie fans, but there's a whole lot of people that have never seen Effie before. And one after another, and again, you think of wrestling and sometimes there can be negative stereotypes with fans. All the comments are like, I have no idea who this person is, but they are the greatest person that I've ever seen. Or how have I just found out about this wrestler? Or like his charisma, his presence, his everything, his jacket, you know what I mean? All just instantly captured people. And it's hard to even put my finger on it, because Effie just has this magic, and it's the same magic when I talk to him. He's one of my favorite memories from Fight Forever, because I never left the building. All I did was do commentary, and then I might have an hour off or something, and there's nowhere to go, and it's just 17 degrees. And one area that really no one was in was this weird kitchen in the venue, well, a non-functioning kitchen. Well, funny to one point, I went in the kitchen and someone had figured out how to turn the burner on the stove, and it was like an industrial burner, so the flame would just be like this high, and there's a dude just standing by the fire, like, "Yo, KG, man, check this shit out." But I was so tired, I would just go on fire. But the point is, I would go down in the kitchen just to stand away from people or just to gather my thoughts for a moment, and I would run into Effie in that kitchen. So sometimes in our delirium in the middle of the night, we would get to spend 5 minutes talking about life in the kitchen during Fight Forever, and that's a fond memory. And I think anyone that doesn't know what Effie's about should follow him on Twitch, and of course buy lots. The number one way to learn more about Effie is to buy Effie merchandise and to buy Effie cameos. If you have a question for Effie, get a cameo. He'll give you the answer directly for a fair fee.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. But yeah, I mean, I've got some Effie merchandise on the way. Actually, so I'm
Me too.
I have. Yes, I've got the Gay Panic T-shirt. Him and Danhausen on the way.
Oh man, what a great name.
That's en route. But speaking of all that, man, I mean, tell us where we can find you. Anything you want to plug and promote?
Sure. I'm always on social media too much at OG Kevin Gill on Twitter. I have an Instagram and a Facebook also. You can find me there. Every Monday on Twitch, Ron Funches and I do a show at 6:05 Pacific time, which you would have to translate for me. I don't know what time it is in Australia.
I'm in England, dude, so I can tell
you. Even better. Okay, well now I at least I know what time it is by you. But anyway, 6:05 California time. Every Monday night, Ron Funches and I get high and watch wrestling with a great guest. And we're able to watch in real time all this great independent wrestling. There's a new show called KG Presents MKW Blast Off, which is a new wrestling product from China. And I host the show and present. They do weekly TV in China, and then once a month, I'll take a bunch of the best matches from the month and host and comment on them, which is really great. And just the idea that there's independent wrestling in China, that there's a wrestling school in China, and that these people are producing TV and doing angles and stuff, and that I could be involved in helping a little bit shine a light on them, I'm honored. I have a new podcast called What's Good in Pro Wrestling with my friend Kate Hensler, and that's the opposite of many, many podcasts out there in today's world, because we exclusively talk about what's good, just what we liked only. Yeah. Like there's no, who has time for the other shit? So that's available everywhere podcasts are heard. And of course, Game Changer Wrestling has a plethora of events coming up. The Collective, individual tickets just went on sale today. If you can't be there in Florida on Wrestling Weekend, please join us on pay-per-view. And let me think if I have anything else. Oh, dignifiedbastard.com if you want to pick up a KG shirt or even some of the classic New York hardcore records that I put out back in the day and that I reissue on occasion. You can do that there. And much love to everyone that supports independent wrestling, and a special shout out to everyone that tells someone from England that they're from Australia.
Dude, we got that when we went to Chicago for Raw. That's all we got. It's like, oh, whereabouts from Australia are you from? Like, well, I'm from England, but you know.
Now, I've been to England a lot, and I've been to Australia a lot. Now, are you from a particular region in England or something? Because there's little things about your accent.
I'm from Yorkshire. I'm a Yorkshireman, so yeah, I can get on, but I can get that, yeah, because London's very much your Cockney twang kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can see that because we had a lot of people in Chicago ask us whereabouts in Australia we're from, so it's we get it all the time, dude.
I apologize for that. That was a great moment in podcasting history.
That was brilliant, man, brilliant.
But I'm really flattered, man. Thank you so much for jumping through hoops to get me here and being patient and for inviting me. I'm grateful. I love to talk with people like you about stuff like this. That this is what it's all about.
Man, I think I've been a massive fan for so long. This is a bucket list for me. It really is. You know,
You're very kind, man.
True story. Honest to God, man, we've had a few bucket list ones so far, and you're one of them. We were very fortunate to tick Danhausen off the list on Friday.
Oh my God! I got to interview Danhausen the other week with Ron, and same thing.
Yeah.
When Ron told me on the air that he was going to be the guest, I was literally like,
oh man, it was.
I met Danhausen. I believe I'm bad with remembering sometimes meeting people. I believe I met Danhausen only once, and I was talking to him just for a moment in the back, and without his gimmick, and we were just talking, and then I think he could tell that I didn't know who he was, and then he told me that he was Danhausen, and I was just like, and I couldn't pick him out now if I saw him again,
Yeah.
but same thing. One time I was talking with Excalibur, and I didn't know, and then he's just like, blah, 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 we're talking for like 15 minutes, and then he's like, KG, I'm Excalibur. I'm like, ah! And then I just like looked at his chin. I'm like, oh, okay, I see it now.
Nah, dude, it's honestly, I always say to my friends, like, to me, I don't want to know what Danhausen looks like. I want to imagine Danhausen does his shopping and goes down the aisles as Danhausen.
Correct.
Right?
I like to picture Danhausen getting his room service delivered in the ROH bubble, and he just answers the door, because you know that happens.
Oh, yeah.
What does the hotel staff think about that? You get Danhausen in the elevator. And I wonder if Danhausen regrets in hindsight the painting of the ears, because I would imagine that could be quite a pain in the arse at the end of the day.
I can imagine so. I wouldn't like to do that, but I couldn't, man. But dude, I cannot thank you enough. I genuinely mean it. I'd love to get you back on at some point.
Thank you, man. Anytime.
No, thank you, man. Legit, look, Kevin Gill.
One love, brother. What up, though? And much love to the whole wrestling world. Keep supporting pro wrestling and focus on what you love. There's enough critics in the world. Like, we've reached maximum critical mass on criticism. Like, we got it.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, man.
Let's put some positive energy out there, man. If you don't like a show, don't watch it. Don't give any energy to it.
Hell yeah, man. But, man, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Peace out.